noticed an alarming trend at the box office. You know, it was we were moving towards family-friendly films kind of really taking the helm, and the box office had to take notice. But recently, and certainly this summer, we noticed two films in particular that grabbed my attention because of how well they did. They happen to be R-rated films, and I'm wondering if this is something that we in the Christian community need to take note of. So I thought, who could I talk to about this? No one better than someone from Focus on the Family. So joining me now via Skype, and I think she's in Colorado, right, as we speak, is Lisa Anderson, who is the director of young adults for Focus on the Family, and she also maintains and runs their website, boundless.org. Is that correct, Lisa?
That is correct. Yeah, our website for young adults.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been with Focus on the Family, and the nature of what it is that you do.
Sure. Yeah, I've been with Focus quite a while now, about 12 years, and used to be on our media and public relations team, and then started hosting our podcast for young adults about 4.5 years ago. Really, I guess just because they decided I was someone who would talk incessantly, and so I kind of got into that. But really our vision with Boundless is to equip young adults to move towards marriage and family in a healthy way, and really to deal with all the baggage that we've been dealt as a generation, really own our stuff and grow up and become adults who have a vision for marriage and family and what that ultimately means. So I started hosting the show about 4.5 years ago, and then kind of took over the helm of the Boundless ministry about 2 years ago. So I love it.
You know, Lisa, when I reached out to you guys to have someone talk to me about what was happening at the box office, I was really concerned about Ted and Magic Mike. But we can't ignore this summer that something really tragic happened, and it seemed to center around movies. So again, the attention or the heat was turned up on Hollywood. And since you're right there in Colorado, would you comment a little bit on what you think, you know, happened? I'm talking about The Dark Knight and talking about the shootings that happened in Aurora. How is your community dealing with that, and how are you guys making sense of it?
Yeah, it's been quite a summer here in Colorado, Meeke, with the wildfires that happened here in Colorado Springs at the end of June, and now this shooting, just a tragedy. And what we've really noticed is how we've come together as a community, and not only that, but how the church here in Colorado Springs has really rallied around folks to support them. In fact, a family in my own church, one of their relatives was shot in the theater, and she has survived. She was shot 3 times in the arm and once in the head. The bullet traveled through her brain, and she actually she's actually recovering well, and it's just really a miracle, and her family has been able to just testify to how good God's been in the midst of all of that. It's amazing. You
know, Lisa, I read a story, I don't know if this is the same girl that you're speaking of right now, but that there was one victim who, because of a birth defect in her brain, the bullet was able to travel through some sort of air pocket in her brain, just missing her brain. Is this the same person that you're referring to?
That's exactly it. Petra Anderson, her name is. Yeah. And it's amazing. The family hadn't even known about it. And then here, all of a sudden, the doctors realized that that's exactly the thing that saved her life. And not only is it a testament to God's goodness, but really to the value of life. And when you say, you know, what is a quote unquote birth defect, here it's something that ultimately saved her and God used. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Are you guys, what kind of responsibility do you think Hollywood plays in all this, or what is the role of Hollywood in what happened in the movie theater?
Sure. Yeah, I think we have to be careful because I think it's still inexplicable as to why the shooter did what he did. And so I think we have to be careful to assign blame to a particular movie. And of course, there are lots of things, especially in these comic franchises, that really aspire greatness. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stories coming out now about the men in the theater who protected their wives and their girlfriends.
Yes.
Really rallying around the fact that what a great way to show the value of manhood and what men are called to be, even biblically. It's a great illustration of a biblical principle. At the same time, you know, it's another reminder for us, and of course we can look back to Columbine more than 10 years ago and other shootings that have happened, that you know, there is evil in the world. And while the devil roams this earth and until God comes back and Christ reigns, we're going to have to deal with that. And sin, you know, has a foothold in where we are. And it's tragic. But, you know, to recognize that our hope is not in what is happening here on earth, but ultimately in the hope that we have for the future.
Oh, that's wonderfully put. Wonderfully put. You know, Lisa, when we were kind of just a few years ago, we here at American Family Association, looking at the movie theaters and looking at what was happening at the box office, we were so pleased to see that clean movies and family-friendly movies were really kind of, making a splash at the box office. Those were the movies that families were coming out to see, and those were the movies that were raking in the dollars. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's anytime that we see Disney or Pixar put something out, it's going to go big at the box office. They just do such a good job with their animation, with their storytelling. I mean, I can't stop talking about the movie Up and just what an amazing story that was, not only for kids, but for their parents, and just talking about the value of marriage and honoring those even into old age, and just the story that was told there. Big stuff coming down the pike from those, and even now this summer, Madagascar 3, some of the more kid-friendly ones, they're always going to go big. But at the same time, there's a huge market for movies that aren't family-friendly. And my concern isn't so much, I think we have a little bit of the frog in the kettle situation where if you look back even into the 80s, there were raunchy movies out there that maybe sometimes we didn't even realize how bad they were, like with language and just some of the innuendo, and we thought they were so innocent. But then you look into the 90s and that trend continued, and now we're just seeing it become common fare and something that people are ingesting, just movie after movie.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because this summer, two of the movies that I'm aware of, and you may have others that you want to throw in here, I'm thinking of Ted and I'm thinking of Magic Mike, and those were the first R-rated movies to enjoy, I guess, the kind of success that it's enjoyed. $54 million, opening weekend. And my question is this, and here's what I did, Lisa. I'm a little bit, and I talk to my husband about these kinds of things all the time. I say, it's not that I don't want to appear self-righteous. I don't want to be self-righteous. And I know that we have liberty and we have freedoms in Jesus Christ that allow us to, one man would say, well, I can't even do PG-13, and someone else says, well, I'm okay with that, and so I don't want to step on people's freedoms. But I kind of did just like a random survey of people at the movie theater, around the time that Magic Mike and Ted were opening. And on one night, we happened to be there watching the movie Brave with our family, and there was a line of women waiting for the next movie theater room to open. And I knew why they were there, but there was something I just had to have confirmation. So I picked the very last woman in line, and I said, what is this line for? And she just kind of was like, thought that we would connect over this, and she goes, oh, Magic Mike, kind of like, this is a girls' night out for us, And something inside of me, Lisa, was a little bit grieved, because I'm concerned that there is a double standard. There was no way that I would have purchased tickets or allowed my husband to have a guys' night out to go see, Demi Moore and striptease. But basically, this is a female version or a male version of that's attracting women. Should we be alarmed by this? Could this become a trend, or do you think this is a kind of a one-hit wonder type thing?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, Meeke, by saying that they've kind of appealed to that girls' night out kind of demographic. And it is one of those, women aren't naturally wired. Our natural trend isn't to be interested in, visual, like for men, what would be pornography.
Right.
What they're appealing to is this, let's get all the girls together, let's just be crazy. They threw in, a lot of people aren't talking about the storyline within Magic Mike where he doesn't want to live the life of a stripper. He wants to build a furniture business and get into a real stable relationship. That is what is appealing to the hearts of women. They want him to succeed. They want this poor guy who all he has to do is strip and train other strippers. They want him to have the real, true love story. So they're going to go and they're going to have fun in the essence of, this spirit of craziness and whatever, but still root for that underlying love story that is ultimately what's going to hook the women into this.
And it's worked. It's working. But here's my question. What is the damage that's associated with the way the love story is cloaked? Because, as most women, I'm sure yourself and myself included, we love that love story. And we love that, here's this guy, he's got, desire to make something of himself. And we know that he has a love interest. But when you get down to it, because I sat down with a friend who is one of the most honest people that I know. And I knew that if I wanted to find out the truth about this movie, I needed to ask her. She'd gone to see it. She told me that her husband purchased the tickets for her and her friends to go see it, thinking, this is just harmless. They're doing a girls' night out. And she told me that the previews only scratch the surface of what's in the movie as far as how truly vulgar it is. And so, and she said she felt a tremendous amount of guilt. So I said, well, what appealed to you that you would go and see this? And she goes, you know, Channing Tatum, the guy who stars in this movie, I think he was in another movie, that you really kind of connect with him and you feel like you want to hear his story. But once you get there, you're just bombarded with these images that won't soon go away. Should we be concerned with that?
We should, and of course it's the studio's intent to only show what would be mildly offensive in the previews, and usually they show their best bits as far as the funniest bits, but as far as vulgarity, I mean, over 150 uses of the F word alone in this movie, 30 uses of the S word, a lot of blasphemies, a lot of profaning of God's name. So it's really concerning to see that not only, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that mainstream culture is going after this, because they populate the summer blockbuster genre with what is ultimately going to be mindless, you know, that kind of mind candy thing. That's no surprise. What I'm surprised by is the number of, you know, I'm a single girl, I'm in small groups. I can't tell you how many of my friends and in my circles on Facebook, I'm seeing girls groups getting together, and I'm talking Bible studies saying, let's together and see Magic Mike. Let's go together and see. I mean, that their target is the female demographic, and the ones who really are seeing it are women in their 20s and 30s, whether married or single. And so I think it's just generally us throwing out any sense of objectivity to this. That's why I love Focus on the Family's pluggedin.com, because they lend objectivity to this issue and say, here's what you're going to encounter in this film, and here's what you need to be aware of. But I think we need to start really putting a sense of discernment on and our thinking caps on to say, we're not going to settle for this anymore.
You know, I think discernment is the perfect way to describe what we need to employ when we're deciding what we're going to go see at the box office, you know, and it's really alarming to me. And, you know, again, with the self-righteousness, I'm not trying to say that everyone should have the same standard and that everyone should, you know, approve of the same things. But when, as you've just described, Lisa, you think of a group of gals getting together and saying, you know what, let's not necessarily get together and go through this Beth Moore study. Let's go see Magic Mike. That's scary to me. That's a little bit scary.
Let's go see Magic Mike after we do the Beth Moore study. I see some of that too.
It really is alarming to me. Let's move on to Ted. You've got an animated teddy bear. Teddy bears are, you know, associated with children, you know, and you could take the same concept and you could tone it down a little bit, and this could have been a family-friendly film, but they didn't do that. Instead, they made this bear as vulgar as they could. I mean, so much so, and the content so heinous that it has an R rating. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and Meeke, what they're doing is they're using the bear to legitimize really the filth that they put out in the film, because who can argue with a little teddy bear who, in just a juxtaposition of craziness, is basically, you know, hurling obscenities, is sitting on the couch with strippers, is, you know, it's that weirdness and that awkwardness that makes people say, oh, this is actually funny. And so it makes them overlook a lot of things that otherwise wouldn't be appropriate. I mean, no girl is going to put up with some guy completely demeaning her to her face in a film and celebrate that. But if a teddy bear does it, then it becomes cute. And so, again, I think it's that frog in the kettle of us being willing to put up with stuff that's not appropriate, that's demeaning to women, and that really just ultimately is not something that is any kind of fare that a Christian, whether single or married, should be willing to ingest.
I agree with you. So what can the believer do? And, you know, and I would say this, I know that what you guys point out, which I think is really astute, is that we don't think it matters a whole lot about what we go to see. But every time we buy a ticket, we're really kind of sending approval back to the movie industry and saying, you know what, we're okay with this, and we're actually saying we want to see more of this. So does it make a difference when even one group of people says, you know what, we're not going to buy tickets for this movie?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we've seen it in box office returns. You know, beginning a few years ago with the Hangover franchise, we had The Hangover and then The Hangover 2, which to date has been the highest grossing R-rated comedy. Now, Ted and Magic Mike may surpass that because they had such big opening weekends.
Yeah.
But, you know, news outlets all over the U.S. were reporting how big The Hangover 2 was. And, you know, there are women, there are Christians that put money into that pot. And so I think it's just it's a consideration that we have to have. And of course, I'm, you know, in the young adult world, but I'm not ashamed to say that we need to return some objectivity to this process and just set some standards for ourselves to say this is not okay. Whether it's, for myself personally, I just choose not to see rated R films.
Yeah.
Someone can convince me, we're talking like a Schindler's List or something that has historic significance. I just won't do it. And I don't need to sit there and parse it out and figure out, well, I'll put up with 30 F-bombs, but I'm not going to put up with any more. I mean, it's ridiculous. So there are so many other things that I could be doing with my time. And like you said, we vote with our wallets, we vote at the box office. And, to sit around and, like we were joking before, after a Bible study and then say, well, what'd you think of this film or what'd you think of this book? We're seeing in that genre too. I don't know if you've heard of the book now 50 Shades of Grey.
Lisa, I was going to ask you about that. I didn't want to put you on the spot because I didn't prep you for that. And but real quick, tell me real quick because we're running out of time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's another example of, specifically for women, legitimizing as a romance what is very truly, and even in the author's estimation, erotica. That is the genre, but it is female porn. I mean, we talk about romance novels as being a form of female porn if they cause you to go places where you shouldn't in your mind. This very specifically with evidences of, sadomasochism, other incidences of violence, specifically his dominance over her and how he does that very poorly and in a very, concerted effort, is just not good.
Right.
But again, because it's not visual, because it's not labeled as porn, we say, well, you know what, it's just a romance and we're going to go ahead and purchase this. And
it's denial. And
to the tune of 31 million copies to this point.
And so you just have to know that Christians are watching this. Really quick, Lisa, how can our viewers contact you or locate your website?
Absolutely. I definitely want them to check out pluggedin.com. Of course, that is our entertainment site where we have movie reviews, music, TV. That really is going to give folks an objective look about what we've been talking about today.
Thank you.
And for young adults who are out there, go to boundless.org. That's where we talk about everything from entertainment and the culture, its effect on us, as well as dating and relationships, career, worldview, faith, everything that young adults are struggling with today.
Lisa Anderson of Focus on the Family. Lisa, thank you so much. We're back in 2 minutes with Monica Cole of 1 Million Moms. Don't go anywhere.